Welcome to the Undisputed Podcast. I'm your host, Jenny Taft. This podcast is the full show from today's episode of Undisputed from start to finish. They've got a busy slate, so Skip, Shannon, let's get to it.
Good morning. Welcome to Undisputed. I'm Jenny Taft with Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharpe. Guys, a lot has changed in the last 24 hours since I saw you. How are we doing today?
Man, this 2020 will not leave us alone. It's always something, and last night was the most stunning of all.
Yes, you and I were just discussing. We did not, as we left yesterday, we saw each other. We did not envision being here.
Whew. Okay. Well, throughout the show, I'll do my best to keep everyone updated if any new developments do come up. But right now, let's just catch everyone up to speed with what happened yesterday in the NBA. The Bucks' decision to boycott Game 5 for the shooting of Jacob Blake sparked boycotts from all other NBA teams that were set to play last night. Bucks guard George Hill said, quote, "We're tired of the killings and the injustice." There was also a players' meeting last night where the Clippers and Lakers reportedly voted to not continue the remainder of the season. They were the only teams to do so, and meetings will continue this morning at 11 Eastern time. So, Shannon, I'll start with you. Your reaction to everything that happened yesterday and last night.
Skip, what I gathered is that the NBA players saying this is not business as usual. They said, although we appreciate taking down a few monuments, renaming a few schools, a few buildings, taking these Confederate generals' names off of military establishments, Skip, but right now, we need more substance than symbols. And while these symbolic gestures may placate some, it's not nearly enough. You see, Skip, they say, what's important to you? And we're starting to see these things that are important to you is becoming distracting from the greater view of things. It's because we went down here and we have Black Lives Matter t-shirt and how many more and say her name. And as we say her name, there's another name that needs to be added to the list. And there's another name that needs to be added to the list. And how many more? That's the question they keep asking. How many more? And they just watched Jacob Blake, 7 shots to the back. And then they watched someone come from another town with a long gun and gunned down 2 people, tried to surrender, and the police let him go. He gone right on through.
Although they did finally go arrest him.
Yeah, finally go arrest him. But Skip, when people see this, though, Skip, this is the problem that they have. They see a young Tamir Rice with a toy gun, and they see the police roll up on the scene, and in 12 seconds, he's dead. He's 12. And they see this young man here have the AR-15 running through the streets. He has on gloves, and they wait till the next morning to go arrest him. They're like, what, how?
Yep.
It is so, I am so proud of the NBA players, Skip. I'm so proud of them. But this is not what they signed up for. A lot of these guys work their entire lives to be in this position. We don't know if and when who will get back to the playoffs, Skip. This might be their one shining moment. And they were willing to sacrifice it. This is not a preseason, Skip. This is not an exhibition. They put a hold to the playoffs. They said, we're going to have a conversation. I'll get to LeBron in a minute. And it says, Skip, we put people in office. What the hell is Lindsey Graham and Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer? What the hell are they there for? That's what we elected them for, is to deal with things like this. So athletes and people like myself that didn't go into politics don't have to deal with it. You're supposed to work for the constituents. But what I'm starting to see, Skip, when it comes up to an election time, everybody wants to get the ball rolling. But you know, black people are not just dying in the streets when it comes to an election year. There's not just inequality in an election year. This goes on year round. But it seems to be you put this on the back burner, deal with your personal agendas, and then when election comes up, let's get it. Black Lives Matter. We need equality. Hell, we've been needing equality. Skip, this is not new. They make it seem like this 2020, and I get the pandemic, and I get that we haven't seen, you got to go back to 1918, the pandemic. But Skip, the inequality and the racial injustice, Skip, that's not new to 2020. But somehow these politicians think this just came about, and they don't seem to understand. But so now this is what the players need to do, and everybody say, okay, what's next, what's next? Well, I'm going to give you an idea of what's next. The players have a platform here. Now you have people that's been dealing with these issues for 40 and 50 years. I got to, the National Action Network, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, African American Policy Reform, the Advancement Project, things of those nature. You see, Skip, the NBA players are the computer, but a computer doesn't work without software. So let's merge the two together. Let's take the players and their platform and get some resources and give it to people that can advance the ball. That's what we need right now, because this is not enough. They say, we're done with this. This is not business as usual. And for LeBron James and the Lakers and Kawhi Leonard and the Clippers say, we'll bounce. We're real about this. For the first time, Skip, you threatened. I heard George Hill. I was like, and I'm saying to myself, Skip, I said, I don't know if they really do that, Skip. I mean, they're already down there. But there are some players that say, yeah, we absolutely will. And LeBron James says, I want these owners to take more ownership of this. I get the statement with Black Lives Matter, and I get all this. But we want you to get those contacts. Skip, when you build these fancy arenas and how you go to the local and state level politicians and get things done, how the NFL, when they want to build these new fancy stadiums, how they go to the local politicians and state politicians and get these things done, these big dollar donors, that's what we want. You say you care about us. You say you care about these issues. Now we want you to put your money where your mouth is. We want to see no more lip service, no more symbols, substance.
Yep. Okay, gut feeling before I take the floor. Season or no season? Finish or no finish?
I'm 50-50 right now. I'm 50-50.
Okay.
Because as Udonis... We
got a long show. We may know more here in the next hour or two.
As Udonis Haslam said, if the Clippers and Lakers leave, what are we staying for?
Well, it sounds like the Bucks could be right there also, so that would be the top three teams, odds makers teams,
exactly.
Right? And that would basically take the heart right out of the playoffs, right?
Adam Silver would. If that were to happen, if the Bucks, Lakers, and Clippers pack up and go, he's shutting it down. Obviously, we don't want to see that happen. No.
But let me first say, I loved what the Milwaukee Bucks did. It took me a little by surprise. I think it took the rest of the NBA by surprise.
Because they said they didn't expect this. NBA execs, even the Bucks execs, didn't see this coming.
Nobody saw this coming outside that locker room. And it didn't happen until there were about 5 minutes until tip-off. So I'm sure they were going back and forth very emotionally inside those locker room doors. And if I'm understanding this correctly, LeBron didn't know about this. Lou Williams and Kawhi and the Clippers did not know about this. They had discussed it. They thought there would be a unified front. If they were going to boycott, it would be with a big press conference led by Chris Paul and LeBron James as the two faces of the league, or the two people at the top of the Players Association. And there would be a complete unified front in which all teams would in unity boycott.
Correct.
But the Milwaukee Bucks decided at the last second, literally at the last second, with Orlando ready to play out on the court. The Magic are out there. They're ready to go. They decided, no, this is pretty much a home game for us.
Right.
This is Kenosha, Wisconsin, which might as well be a Milwaukee suburb. It's about 40 miles. You know, some people, I'm sure, commute into Milwaukee to work. And they obviously took this a little more to heart than any other team could, because it's theirs.
Right.
It's in their home area, state. It's right there for them to have to come to grips with. And George Hill, as the emotional leader of this team, I'm not sure he's the on-court leader, but he's the emotional leader.
Right.
He is the out-front spokesman, and he had said just a few days ago, we shouldn't even be in this damn place, this bubble,
That's
right?
what he said.
And I applaud them, and I congratulate them for taking a very gutsy plunge that became a resounding statement in this country. I got calls, I got texts from all over the country from friends and relatives saying, can you believe this?
No. I didn't.
Wow. They did that.
They did it.
And they were the first big domino to fall. And then all of a sudden, across sports last night, dominoes fell everywhere. And they started it. It was because the Bucks had the guts to plunge. They broke ranks to do it. They went prematurely, but they did it.
But you know who the big dog was?
Yep.
Giannis.
Well, I'm sure he was.
If Giannis says we're playing, they're playing.
I got it. So I did love the statement of it. And again, is it going to end racism in the United States? No. But it was another awakening moment where I can only speak, from the white perspective. I think a lot of white people sat back once again, as they did in those weeks through the protests after the George Floyd murder in Minneapolis.
Yes.
And it was another enlightenment moment. It was another awakening moment of, wow, they are really serious about this. And I was forced to go through a night with no basketball. And you know how much I love my NBA and my NFL. We're going to talk about the NFL in a few minutes here. It hurt, but it hurt in a good way because it just showed how serious these players are about trying to get something done.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to make the statement one more time. It was naive for anybody, including George Hill and the Bucks, to think that all the protests, all the awakening, all the enlightenment, everything you talked about, eradicating those symbols, those statues, those names, that would eliminate racism within the ranks of the police across this country.
No.
Because you know and I know, racist cops are already embedded in their jobs.
That is correct.
They were grandfathered in. They're already there. They're in power. They got a badge. And they got a gun.
Yeah.
And you can't stop their mentality. You hoped that some would be awakened enough to say, maybe I should think twice the next time, maybe.
Right.
But there's one guy or maybe a couple of guys in Kenosha who didn't get that message, and it happened.
Skip, I don't think George Hill thinks that, after the protest, but what we want is accountability.
Accountability. Consequences.
Yes.
Consequences.
Because as you mentioned, as those cops are embedded, the system is also in place. And people say it's a broken system. It's not. Skip, it's like when you stick the key in your ignition and turn it over, or you push the button and it fires up, the car is not broken. The car did exactly what you were supposed to do when you pushed the button. It cranked. The police system is working exactly how it was supposed to work when they instituted 200 years ago. The system is not broken. Actually, it's working like a finely tuned machine. It's doing everything that they set it up to do.
You can certainly argue. So, I throw this out just to frame all this. We always talk about perspective.
Yes.
In context. Is it possible that some in the bubble are they're suffering such bubble burnout? They're so at wit's end. There's such cabin fever because they've been stuck in that bubble for so long and they don't like it. And the families are to come round 2, which would be the next round of the playoffs, but they're not quite there yet. Is it possible nerves are so frayed that this is a little more of a raw reaction than it would have been had they been playing real basketball at home, with real travel schedules and the whole thing? Maybe a little bit, maybe a little bit. Still, it was a beautiful thing to watch.
Yes.
And still, it prompted a fiery meeting at 8 o'clock Eastern time. Everybody went, coaches, players. They even had some of the family members of Jacob Blake on some sort of Zoom call to participate. So this is high, raw emotions.
Correct.
And there was some anger because some of the leaders of the other teams were like, I thought we were going to discuss this and have a unified approach to this, all for one for all.
Right.
LeBron was angry in part because of that, because he wanted to be the out front leader. But he also took it personally that the owners haven't done enough.
Right.
So reportedly, he led both his team and, to me, the second best team, or maybe the first best team, the two best teams, Clippers, the two LA teams, walked out in unison.
Yeah.
That was the first unified approach of those two teams, right?
Yes.
And he led the charge out the door because they had heard enough or not heard enough during the meeting.
Right.
So the ranks are split a little bit here because the top two teams, we think you can throw the Bucks in, obviously.
Right.
They're saying we haven't done enough. All those things are great. The T-shirts, the logos on the floor, the messages on the back of the jerseys, all that's fine, but it wasn't enough. And it didn't obviously stop what happened in Kenosha, Wisconsin. So now it's Lakers, Clippers, and I would like to think it's more of a threat than a vow, that it's not over yet, and they're going to meet again at 11 Eastern, 8 our time here in Pacific. Yes. And I would hope that they would see their way clear to maybe boycott another couple of games, but to come back and finish the year. And this is my gut feeling on this whole thing. I know they have all discussed, starting with George Floyd, could they do more at home than in the bubble? Well, I'm curious what you think about this, because my 2 cents from a distance are that in the bubble, you still have that great stage. We're entering the heart of the NBA playoffs. Everybody's interested and everybody's ears, eyes are open to what you're saying from the bubble.
Right.
If George Hill, let's take him for an example, goes home, does he lose some of his stature, his platform, his power? Maybe. I would say yes.
Skip, I don't believe. Here's the thing. There's no worse feeling than feeling like you're helpless.
Yep.
Because, Skip, as you see a child is crying and you know there's something wrong and there's nothing you can do.
Okay.
Well, these black athletes, and there's some of these people feel like there's black people in America crying and they're down in a bubble and there's nothing they can do. George Hill says, you know what? If I wasn't in this bubble, guess where I would be? In Kenosha, Wisconsin. Okay. Maybe LeBron James says, if I wasn't here, I'd be in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
Okay.
Maybe I would be a part of Portland. Maybe I would be in Chicago, but I'm here in this bubble. You see, Skip, the thing is that what people don't understand, and I want people to understand this every day. Every day you live your life, I want you to understand one thing. You're writing your eulogy. And LeBron James says, I'm writing my eulogy. Some of these guys says, I'm writing my eulogy. Am I just going to be a basketball player? When they lay me, as I'm laying in that casket, or I'm in that urn, only thing they're going to say about me, I was a basketball player, is that the only thing they can say?
Okay. Well, none of them are prisoners in the bubble, let me tell you.
No, but
they could leave now. But at this moment, they could all pack and go.
Yes, but they like, you know what? I want to be here for my team. And I thought that, you know, Skip, and maybe it was naive of them to believe that after this uproar, this uprising that we've had over the last 3 months, that it would tone down. It's ratcheted up. It's going nowhere, Skip. Every night you turn on the phone, you see your television, you see another black, another unarmed getting killed. And so we're adding another name to Walter Scott, to Eric Garner, to Philando Castile, to Alton Sterling.
I'm not sure we see one every night.
Skip, they say there have been 300. So how many days has it been since George Floyd was May 29th to here we are August 27th?
300 unarmed black men or women.
They said there's been another 300. There've been another 300 murders. Let's just say
shot by white cops.
We don't know if they were shot we don't know if it was, because here's the thing, Skip. What happens when there's no camera? You see, they didn't have body cameras. That's video from somebody's cell phone. Skip, what we've been conditioned, and I was talking to someone last night, Skip, and I said, you know what, we've been conditioned. Because we've always been told, Shannon, you got to look a certain way. You got to cut your hair a certain way. You got to act a certain way. And Skip, before the Rodney King, when the police were involved with blacks, we had been so conditioned, the first thing we asked, what did he do? He had to do something for the cops to kill him. The cops don't shoot people without giving for no reason. And then we saw Rodney King. Now, we get the protest, John Lewis on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and Skip, we saw the protesters in grief. That was a different situation. Yep. But we talking about police in a one-on-one situation. That was really the first time that it came into our living room. And we thought, wait a minute, we're going to have to rethink how we look at the police, because this notion that they have a reason to do what they did got thrown out the window. Yep. And so now we have what we call excessive force. And so now you don't get the benefit of the doubt. The cops have always received the benefit of the doubt, and they want to continue to receive the benefit of the doubt. And they said, well, Shannon, when black people kill people in Chicago, let me tell you what happens, Skip. When they kill somebody in Chicago, they find out who it is. They don't say, well, we need to gather all the information. We need to do a more thorough investigation before we go pick up Pookie because he killed Ray Ray. They go pick up Pookie, they bring him in, and they gather information as they got his butt in jail. When Dennis Chauvin, the DA wanted to, we need to gather all the information. Because we don't know the circumstances. Yep. That's not how it happened. See, those guys are peace officers, Skip. They're there to protect So they have an obligation. So I think this is what's going on, Skip. And so to give LeBron, give Kawhi a lot of credit, Giannis, because I think they have the most at stake here. Skip, those are the most visible names. They're the biggest name.
Yep.
I believe a championship does the most for them than any other guy. Throw James Harden in there, Skip. And for them, and like you said, maybe it's just, but I don't believe Doc Rivers, after what he spoke, I don't believe this is an empty promise from him. From LeBron James and to hear him and know what he's been about, I don't believe this is an empty threat from them. I really don't.
So I think I'm hearing from you that if LeBron James reportedly said last night, we need to leave here. If you leave, you have to be in the streets, as in Kenosha, in Portland, in Seattle, wherever you're going to go.
Yes.
I think you're telling me that LeBron has decided to go back and be in the streets.
I believe he would. Because, Skip, the thing is that we're going to have to look. We're going to have to put, and I was talking to Michael Eric Dyson, and I think we're going to have him on tomorrow, Skip.
Yep.
And I say, Doc, we're going to have to find people at the local level, mayors, because they do the hiring and the firing of the police department.
They do.
I said, we're going to have someone to run on a ticket that says we're going to break this union, the police union. And if you're not willing to run on that ticket, you can't be in office.
That's got to be issue number one, and that was straight from Doc, who's, remember, his father, Grady, was a cop on the west side of Chicago.
Got to break the police union. Skip, and another thing I want to see. Like the president can only serve for 8 years. That needs to be Congress term limits. Because, Skip, we've got people in there for 30 years, and it's the same problems when they stepped into office and that they've been there for 30 years that it is today. So I'm sorry, Madam Speaker, Ms. Pelosi, I'm sorry, you got to go. Chuck Schumer, I'm sorry, but you got to go. Lindsey Graham, Rand Paul, Mitch McConnell, you got to go. Because the issues that came that you said, oh, we're going to take care of this, we're going to do this, you done nothing. And everybody becomes outspoken, Skip, in an election year. Everybody wants to do so much. But, Skip, these issues have been going on last year when it was an election year, and the year before that. So we got to stop letting these politicians, because what they do, Skip, is they overpromise and they underdeliver. Every last one of them. I'm not talking about bipartisan. I'm talking about bipartisan. I'm talking about Republicans, independents, Democrats, all of you guys, you lie. You get in office and tell us you're going to do one thing and you do absolutely nothing. And we're fed up.
Why do you think I always tell you I'm not political? I don't have any interest in it? Because my whole life, from the time I was 5 years old, I knew that was the truth about politics. They all overpromise and they all underdeliver and they all lie. And in the end, I'm like, so what?
Yes. They'll say anything, Skip. They'll say anything, promise anything to get elected. And when they get elected, even though it was the people, they're going to go to the big donors. They're going to go to the big people that gave them the most money. Okay, so what do you want me to do? That's how it works. And it's so frustrating that here we are. Dr. King, Malcolm X, James Baldwin, all these guys in the 60s. And Skip, and I get this. And stop with this. Well, we elected a black president, so now that you elected a two-term black president, racism went away. If anything, it ratcheted up. That's how we got here.
Well, in the end, I hear everything you just said. I still think we have the greatest country in the world, but it has a big, bad problem.
But, Skip, here's the thing. Other countries that had racism, they were under no guise that it was equal. It's only America that wants you to believe that America was like, we were created and it was going to be utopia. You can't have a utopia if you bring a group of people in 1619 and you treat them less than. You rob them of their humanity, their dignity, and their names. You say that you're less than. You treat them like that for 400 years and say, boy, ain't America great. For who? For when? For how? And because a few get out, you take a Robert Smith, who happens to be the wealthiest African-American, and you take Oprah. See, they like to take isolated incidents, Skip, and say, see, but Skip, it's 43 million with 13% of the population. So you got 1,000. You got 1,000 success stories. And that's supposed to be, see, Shannon, see what you can become? Really?
All I can tell you is you better get out and vote.
Oh, we going out in droves. If I got to go back and pick people up and take them to the polling station.
I appreciate that, Shannon. All right, I'll take a ride. That'll be a good one. Guys, we are far from done talking about this.
No mercy.
The NBA boycotts have raised the question of whether we will also see players in the NFL do the same. The Lions had already canceled a practice earlier this week following the shooting of Jacob Blake. And USA Today's Jared Bell said that this was a sign of evolution and protests within the NFL and that it better, quote, brace itself. Guys, just so you know, Washington, the Jets, and Colts have currently canceled practices today. So, Shannon, how will this boycott movement impact the NFL in your opinion?
Skip, I'm not really sure because the one thing that we know that other sports organizations have always been more unified than the NFL. Basketball, Skip, there's a reason why they have guaranteed contracts. There's a reason why they don't have franchise tags. There's a reason why after 4 years they're free agents. Not a fifth-year option, not two franchise tags and a possible transition tag. There's why. You remember baseball, Skip, in '94? They shut down the season.
Yep.
We shut it down. So I think those organizations have always been more unified than the NFL, Skip. And so I don't see a scenario. I don't see the NFL players, Skip. Hell, they couldn't get together and come up with CBA. Because guess what they still got? The franchise tag.
Yeah.
Guess what they still don't have, Skip? Guaranteed contract.
And they fairly recently signed off on all
on another 10 years.
Yep.
What labor organization you know signed 10-year deals? Not Skip, not 3 and an option. 10 years. The thing is with basketball players, Skip, I think because, and I get it, because they've been unified for so long, they have guaranteed contracts. Some of these guys, and some of the NFL players, Skip, if they don't play another game, they got $150, $200 million, so they're good. Mm-hmm. It's the lesser tier guys that feel the pinch, the sting of not playing an entire season. So, Skip, I think the thing is if NBA boycott the playoffs and the remainder of the season and the NFL goes out there and play, does it undermine what the NBA has done? It's really hard to say, Skip, because I've really never thought the NFL would go that far because only a handful was willing to show support for Colin Kaepernick. And even some within his own ranks talk negative about him.
Yep.
And some of those same ones that talk negative about him heap praise upon him now. So for me, Skip, it's really hard to say the direction in which the NFL, but I tell you what they could have had they not signed that CBA and threatened to hold out this season, they could have gotten a lot more, and they could have gotten some of these owners that are powerful. Because they're like, guess what, Jerry? You don't want us to take a knee? We're not going to, guess what? We won't take a knee, but we won't even take a seat in the building. Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That would have been a message.
It would have been. Help me out. What happened in 1987 to the National Football League?
They struck.
Yep. And what did the owners do? Watch this.
We got what they called them scabs.
They didn't call them scabs. That's what people outside the NFL call them.
But they called them replacement
players.
Replacements.
Yes.
And guess what, Skip? Fans still showed up.
They did.
And networks still put it on TV.
I still went to the press box every Sunday, and I covered the scabs. They didn't want them called scabs, but I covered the replacement players.
Right.
And it just obviously wasn't the same, but people still watch because they love their NFL.
Right.
And finally, we got to a Monday night game fairly late in the season at Dallas. Washington at Dallas, arch rivalry. And a bunch of star Cowboy real players walked the picket line. And they said, we're playing.
Yeah.
And Joe Gibbs' team had all replacement players, and they kicked the golden tails of those who walked the picket line.
They did.
Okay, just for the record. So that's obviously always a possibility if you want to go that far. Let me get back to the man who wrote this piece for USA Today that Jenny talked about as she led us into this topic. His name is Jarrett Bell. We've had him on the show a number of times. Jarrett Bell has been a long-time prominent African-American voice in this country for USA Today as the pro football columnist. I have known Jarrett Bell since we were first teammates in 1982 at the Dallas Times-Herald. And trust me, He's a good man.
He is.
He's level-headed. He's even keel. He will take a stand, and a passionate stand, but he will look before he leaps. He will do his homework, and he will speak from solid ground. There's no knee-jerk in Jarrett Bell. So very early this morning, on my treadmill, I'm reading this piece that he wrote, because I read everything Jarrett writes, and it startled me because it is spilling with passion, almost raw passion. Maybe the rawest I've ever felt in a piece written by Jarrett Bell, with a line that said, the league, as in the NFL, had better brace itself for protests that could go far beyond kneeling, which led me to, obviously, boycotts. Well, obviously, if they were playing the per usual preseason games right now, I'm pretty sure this weekend's games would be boycotted, right?
Yep.
I just believe they would be, and maybe next week's too. I don't know that for sure, but that's my gut on what's happening in our country right now in a very good way. But it doesn't start the National Football League because of, obviously, the COVID concerns
2 weeks from today.
until September 10th, Thursday night, September 10th, and we got Texans at Chiefs,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
Okay, and then it's Sunday's a full slate, ending with Sunday night, Cowboys at Rams. Followed into a Monday night slate of 2 games, obviously, and here we go.
Yep.
Are those games at this moment in any jeopardy? I'm going to assume that they are. I'm assuming there are going to be some discussions because I've seen this league be more unified in its leadership thinking than ever before. I got it about the CBA. I got it. But we did see Patrick Mahomes lead a video of players, right?
Yep. To vote.
To vote and sort of calling out Commissioner Goodell to, it's time to wake up and do something here. And I loved all that. And I love everything the commissioner of this league has done because he's been open-hearted about this and said all along, I was wrong about Colin Kaepernick, and now my mind is open.
Skip, and although people criticize Commissioner Goodell with everything that goes wrong with the league, and I think some of it has to do with his handling of the disciplinary cases, and it seems like it's uneven. But you and I both know, you having covered the game for 40 years, me having played, Roger Goodell works at the behest of the owners. Everything that comes, Roger makes $40, $50 million a year, flies on the private jet, so he gets to take the arrows that the owners are shielded from. The Jerry Jones gets no blowback. The Daniel Snyders, the Maras, the Rooneys, they get no blowback. That's what his big chest for. That's why he lifts the weights and still run, because he gets that blowback, Skip. He gets up there and gets booed. When the owners come up there, they get applauded. Little do that, if the fans actually realize he's only doing what they ask him to do. He's only doing what they told him to do, Skip. So the question is, because Skip, it comes down to this. I believe some of the owners are open-minded, some of them are closed, but we know there's one owner that mind is closed, his mind is made up. I want to see what the Dallas Cowboys players, what is their answer? What is their response?
It is America's team. It is the most valuable team in all the world.
Yes.
All the world.
The world.
I'm with you. It'll be very interesting, led by Dak Prescott, to see how they respond now. And again, look, I'll disqualify myself here. I love my NFL just like I love my NBA. In my heart of hearts, do I want to see them play every game? You better believe I do. But I also believe in this cause. And if you can convince me that boycotting NFL games would somehow help continue to eradicate racism, especially in the ranks of the police forces, I'd be all for it. I hope it doesn't come to that. My gut is it won't come to that, but your gut is more leaning the other way right now.
No. Skip, I think they understand that, Skip. But the players, as visible as LeBron is, he does not have the contact of a Mark Cuban. He does not have the contact of a Jenny Buss with these local and state legislators that can help get laws enacted that benefit the minority communities. That's what they're asking. That's what the players are asking of these owners. Yes, Patrick Mahomes is a big name, is a face. So is Aaron Rodgers. So is Tom Brady and Aaron Donald. But they don't have the contacts of Jerry Jones, Skip, of Miss Ford. Miss Ford in Detroit can pick up the phone, and every senator is going to take her call. That governor is going to take her call. That mayor is going to take her call. That AG will take her call.
True.
That's what these owners have that these players don't. Because if a player calls it that, well, he's not in right now, but you let one of these billionaire owners call. Miss Ford is on the phone. Patch her through.
Yep.
Jerry Jones is on the phone.
Yep.
Patch him through. That's what the players want. That's what the NBA.
Maybe that could even go to the Oval Office.
Yes.
Patch him through.
Yes.
Right?
But we already know.
Okay. Well, whoever's in the Oval Office.
Yeah. Look, we're going to turn out. We're going to vote. It's very clear that our vote is very important because, Skip, nobody tries to take anything from you that's not important. People ain't robbing the piggy bank. People, they going where it's big. So if it's that important, they want to deny you that right, it must be very important.
Yep.
So we're going to turn out to vote. But I just want people to understand, if we put people in office and they don't do what they say, when it come time to vote their butt out, we're going to get them right on up out of there.
Nope, I got you. So I did neglect to say in our opening topic that, speaking of what you just spoke of, remember the Bucks stayed in their locker room after deciding to boycott that game yesterday.
Yes.
They stayed in there for 2.5 or 3 hours because that's what they were. That was the time they were supposed to be on the court, right?
Yeah.
And what did they do during that time? By phone, they tried to contact politicians in the state of Milwaukee and powers that be in and around Milwaukee, and tried to see if they could exact change, if they could get some instituted, they could get some promises. You always say who cares about a political promise? But at least they were trying to do what you're describing that owners can readily do.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, so back to Jared Bell. How did he end this piece? He said that the real message here, and he's hoping it's going to come from NFL players and all Americans, is that we need to sharply demand accountability, which is what you always say. Police, like other citizens, must pay a price with criminal convictions for violating the rights of people in the heinous fashion that too often victimizes black and brown people.
Yes.
So I love this from Jared Bell, and I congratulate him. I don't want to see the NFL go away, but it opens your mind to consider the power of the NFL, which is obviously beyond the power of the NBA.
And you got 32 of the most powerful men in their particular communities. And some is only one team per state. It's hard to see a scenario that someone is more powerful than Arthur Blank in the state of Georgia. So he can pick up a phone call. He can call Governor Kemp. He can get legislation. He can look, this is what we need to do.
I believe that's what LeBron was all about last night. That's what he wants. Number one.
You use that power when you want to use it. Use it to help us. Because, Skip, this notion, sometimes, what's frustrating to me is that sometimes that because blacks make a lot of money, and most of their owners, with the exception of Michael Jordan, are white. Michael is the only minority, African-American owner. Oh, they love black. You see them they paid him $50 million. Skip. Because you pay a guy $50 million, how much is he helping your bottom line? If you pay somebody $50 million, so he got to be delivering, you ain't taking a loss. I guarantee you, Jeannie Buss and the Lakers ain't taking a loss on LeBron James. You know that, I know that.
No, I agree with that.
So that's what they're asking. NBA owners, we need you to use some of that power. We need you to use some of that clout for us. You say you care about us, show us.
Got to applaud these athletes for calling attention to just where we're falling short over and over again as a country. And going back to the boycotts yesterday, there were plenty of former players that also showed their support, including Dwayne Wade, Scottie Pippen, and Bill Russell. Kenny Smith was also using his platform on TNT to make a strong statement. Guys, check it out.
Right now, my head is ready to explode, just in the thoughts of what's going on. And I don't know if I'm even appropriate enough to say it. What the what the players are feeling and how they're feeling. And for me, I think the biggest thing now is to kind of, as a black man, as a former player, I think it's best for me to support the players and just not be here tonight. And figure out what happens after that. Yeah, I just don't feel equipped to do that.
And I respect that.
Wow. Shannon, do you like what Kenny Smith did?
I do. It's tough, Skip. And people don't understand. And I guess if you're not black, it's hard to understand what it's like being black. Because they preface everything. Doc Rivers won a championship as a black head coach. Skip, I remember John Thompson, when they asked him, Coach Thompson, when he won the national championship, Skip, and he's like, you're the first black coach to win a national He's like, I'm a coach. I'm a coach. So it's get prefaced. Oprah is the richest black woman in America. And Robert Smith is the richest African American in America. Everything get prefaced black. So that's what it is. And it's so heavy on because Kenny is a black man in America. Kenny have young black men that's growing up in America. And he says, I played in this league. I think I need to show solidarity with him.
Yep.
Listening at him talk, it's tough. Skip, I remember, and you remember this, Skip, and I went back and I read. Skip, you remember when Doc was the head coach in Orlando, they burned his house down?
I remember it well.
They burned the man's house down.
They did.
For what? No other house was burned down in the community. Just that one. If I'm not mistaken, Doc's wife is Caucasian.
I think they're split now. But
yes.
Yes, the mother of the children. Yes.
And they believe, because Skip, if you think about it, Skip, if a white person moves into an all-black neighborhood, black people don't try to do everything they possibly can to get them up out of there. Write graffiti on the door, leave white this, or do things to make them feel unsafe. But if you notice, I was just looking at the case in Long Island and how the couple just terrorized a single black woman and a child. Just terrorized. Why? But racism is dead, Skip. We elected a black president, so racism is dead. This is a shame. And you could listening to Kenny talk and listening to Chris Webber talk, and I heard Jim Jackson talk, and their heart just breaks of being black in America. And what we thought, the promises and the hopes, and Dr. King says, one day I hope my kids would be judged by the character of the character, and not their skin. But here we are, Skip. Dr. King died a couple of months before I was born. I'm 52. And the very fight that he was fighting, Malcolm X, I think, died in '63. The very fight that he's fighting, we're still fighting today.
You got that right.
What the progress, Skip? And that's what's hurting. And people like with Shannon, Kenny Smith is on TV. You're on TV. You made money. Skip, the measure of a man is not what he does for himself. What can he do for the people? They cannot be seen. They cannot do for themselves. Kenny has a voice. Kenny has a platform. The NBA players have voices, have platforms. So do the NFL.
Yep.
And they're saying the communities that you see, that's where we come from. And had I not been able to jump high, run fast, hit a ball far, that could have been me. That never leaves your psyche.
Yep,
That never leaves your psyche.
So, my reaction to Kenny Smith last night, first of all, I love Kenny Smith on and off the court. I love him as a man, and I love him as an analyst because he's a really good man.
He's real.
He's real.
He should be building a team of coaching.
I agree, because what you see on TV is what you get off TV.
Yes.
That said, my only issue with what he did was twofold. Number one, he ended up pulling a Milwaukee Bucks on his two teammates on the air, because remember, the Bucks went a little prematurely. It was a last-second emotional decision,
Right.
raw. 5 minutes to tip off. No, we're not playing. But they had discussions ongoing with LeBron, CP3, other teams, and there's going to be a unified front and a big press conference. We boycott X games. And the Bucks just said, no, we just can't do this. We can't dredge up enough emotion to even walk through that door onto that court to think about playing a basketball game when this happened in our town. So the problem with that is it left the Orlando Magic out on the court looking like, to some people, they didn't care enough about the issue at hand to not play. It looked like they want to just play basketball. They don't have any real passion. They don't care nearly as much as the Bucks do about the issue at hand. Well, that's not fair to the Magic, because
they didn't know.
They didn't know, and I'm pretty sure they do care. I can't tell you that for a fact, but I'm pretty sure there are a bunch of players on that team that care as deeply and passionately as the Bucks do about what happened in Kenosha.
Correct.
And it put everybody in a little bit of a bad situation because it wasn't a unified front. So it struck me as ironic that it looked like Charles and Shaq were surprised, like this was not planned, it wasn't choreographed. It looked real to me, that it was a spur-of-the-moment decision by Kenny, and it leaves Shaq and Charles in a little bit of an awkward position. Should they walk off also? Will they look like that they care less about what happened in Kenosha if they stay and just keep doing their job? Maybe. I wouldn't want to be sitting in that seat.
I didn't take it as that. I think, and Kenny said that even on the drive up, there's a lot of thoughts running through my head. What do I do? How should I do it? Should I do anything?
Okay, I got it. But why do I turn on Kenny Smith? What do I want from him? I want wisdom. I want insight. I want breakdown. I want perspective from the one man on that panel that I respect the most when it comes to those things.
Oh, yeah, he's definitely an X and O guy.
He is that. He also has a great worldview to me, and I appreciate always, put it in perspective for me, Kenny. And for the first time in all the years I've watched him closely, he just said, I can't do it because he used the word appropriate. I don't feel I'm appropriate enough. And he said, I haven't talked to any players, so it's hard for me to speak to what they're actually feeling. And he said, my head's about to explode, and I just can't do it tonight. Off with the microphone, and I'm out. Okay. So from my little seat over here, I can relate, because there are many days that I come in here and I say, I just don't know enough. I'm not good enough to be talking about this, but I'm going to try. I'm going to plunge. Maybe I'll swing and miss. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but I'm going to try, because I do believe we have a core audience who comes to us, came to us early this morning to say, hey, you guys, what happened last night? What do you think about it? Right or wrong? Just plunge, just try. Well, sometimes I'm at a loss. And sometimes I walk away from the show saying, gee, I wasn't worthy of even trying to discuss those issues, but I tried because my partner needed me to try, and maybe some in our audience needed me to try. So that's my only issue with Kenny is I got it. It was a nice statement. It worked just the way the Bucks statement worked, because it was a shocker. It startled me. And again, it made me think. But I also missed his perspective going forward, because I wanted those three to kick it around and try to make me think about things that had not yet occurred to me about what had just happened. That's just what we do.
Yes, and like I said, I think the thing is that hearing these guys speak, how raw the emotion is, and how uncertain, this is still happening. I just knew, Skip. I just knew, and maybe that's naive on my part. I knew there were going to be wholesale changes, because a system that's been in place for that long is not going to be dismantled overnight.
No, it won't be.
So I understood that. I said, but you know what? The cops on notice now. They know people out there, filming them, and they're going to tamper this down. But then you come to realize, well, the protections that they are afforded are still in place. So why should I tamp down? If that's what's in me, Skip.
Yeah.
Because they're still protected by the unions.
They are.
Even when the unions know. Skip, it's hard. I mean, it takes a special type of person to know someone is wrong and still stand solidly behind them.
Yep.
They know Dennis Chauvin is wrong, and they still stand behind him. And guess what, Skip? They'll try to get him his job back. If he were to get off, they'll try to get him his job back. This guy that shot this guy 7 times in the back, they're going to try to get him his job back. And that's what's so hurtful. It's like, we don't even matter. Skip, I watch. Just go on the internet. I watch people, they'll pet a bear, they'll pet a tiger, they'll let a snake hang around their neck. I saw a lady up there at Sturgis. She got too close to a mother and a calf, and the calf picked up and slung her around. But they see a black man walking down the street, and they'll cross over because they're afraid.
Yep.
Now, I'm not afraid of a bear. I'm not afraid of a lion or a tiger or a snake or a wild buffalo. But a black human, because you don't see us as that. You see us as animals. And you're afraid of more.
Don't include me.
Skip. No, not everybody.
Yeah.
Not everybody. Skip. But see, Skip. The thing which you've always been willing to do, that you'll open your eyes, you'll open your heart, you'll listen, and you say, okay, let me see, because I'm not black, so I can't tell you what it's like to be black. I've never lived a black experience, but I have black friends. I'll listen, and when you listen, you don't try to deflate. Say, well, Shannon, what about Chicago? What about Detroit? What about New York? You say, oh, is that how you feel? Is that what's going on? Is that why you feel this way? That's what you're willing to do, but not enough. You see the stance that Jerry's took? Jerry said it was different. 2017 is different than 2020, yet his stance is exactly the same.
Well, it changed in 2 weeks. It changed back in 2017.
Exactly.
That was then, this is now. That was then 2 weeks ago, this is now.
It didn't change.
Yep.
His wording changed.
Yep.
What was in his heart stayed the same.
I would agree.
So that was the difference, Skip. You are willing to listen. So few people are willing to listen and understand that it's different for a black man and woman in America than a white man or woman in America. With the same education, blacks make less. With the same crime committed, blacks get more time. We're underemployed at a high rate. But they want to tell us it has nothing to do with the skin. Yes, it does. It has everything. Because you set it up that way.
Yep.
No mercy. Players across the league, inside and outside of the bubble, have been supporting the decision for teams to boycott games over the shooting of Jacob Blake. LeBron tweeted out, in all caps, "Bleep this man, we demand change. Sick of it." LeBron also reportedly voted to not continue the season and walked out of the meeting after it was only the Lakers and Clippers who supported that stance. So, Shannon, what is your best guess on how LeBron wants this to play out right now?
He wants to see the men that are more powerful than him use their platform, use their means to help a community in need. That's what he wants to see. And he says, if you're not, I'm willing to walk away from it to show you just how serious I am about this situation. Skip, what has happened is that LeBron and I think a lot of the guys in the bubbles and I think a lot of people outside the community are starting to see the progress slow that was generated from the George Floyd murder. And it's like, that was not what, and that was not what I expected. And he says, I'm down in the bubble, and LeBron says, I can do too, because a lot of guys, Kyrie was the first one to say, man, forget this. Let's just keep the focus on this, and then don't even worry about that bubble. But LeBron says, I can do 2 things. I can bring attention, and I can go play basketball. But in the process of him being in the bubble, he's seen the movement almost stall. And he's like, no, that's not why I came down here. Yes, I came to play, but I was hoping that the movement that had started after the brutal murder of George Floyd would continue. And it's not. And I think the people that could help, because remember, Skip, remember now, a lot of the things that were going on in the 60s, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund was a lot of white Jewish lawyers. It was a lot of whites that got on board. Really what started the skip, when they killed those 2 Catholic priests down in the South, I think it was Mississippi, that changed the dynamic.
Yep.
LeBron says, you guys worth billions. You got contacts that they're a fan of mine, but they don't want to hear what I got to say. Because sometimes, Skip, you'll be willing to listen to someone that looks like you, that sounds like you, that talks like you, that travel in the circle of you, as opposed to me. Maybe they can say it, phrase it, make it digestible that you like it. And I haven't seen enough of that. You've got all these T-shirts, Black Lives Matter, on the court, issue statements. But have you called your local legislators? Have you called your state legislators? Have you called your attorney general?
Yep.
Have you called your DAs? Have you talked to the mayors? What have you done? Police chiefs, what have you done? So I need to see more. And if I don't see more, I'm gonna take my ball and go home.
So you think this is a genuine threat? That it is highly possible LeBron, Clippers, Bucks will take their balls and go home?
1,000%.
Would you, it seems like the more you talk, the more you're leaning toward that's going to happen. Is that your gut?
Unless they get the assurances that these owners are going to become an active participant. Because, Skip, it's easy, Skip, you listen, you know, you can, oh yeah, that's, you know, you go to the, but are you invested? How invested are you? Because in any team, Skip, in order any team to be successful, you need the top to be as equally invested as the janitors. So the owner needs to be as invested as their janitors. Well, LeBron James says in order for this thing to work, we need the most prominent people in America to be invested in our community as we are. And if you're unwilling to do that, we're going to see, you know, what will you do? What will make you, as my grandma would say, you know, donkey was stubborn, you know, you can't get him to G-a-ha. Well, what's going to get you to move? What can make you move, Skip? What's the carrot and what's the stick? Because we try, we get carrot, we come down here, we play in the bubble, we quarantine, we're away from our family for a month. So now we got to try to stick.
So for me, again, my 2 cents from a distance, I found this to be a stunning change last night in LeBron's approach to all of the above. Because leading up to the bubble, it felt to me like LeBron went radio silent. I didn't hear anything. He said you can do 2 things, but I didn't see anything from him. I think you assumed he could do 2 things because he obviously could do 2 things. He could use the bubble stage, since we'd been deprived of that game for what have been 5 months, to continue to mount a protest, to continue to enlighten, to campaign for all of the above from the bubble, because everybody's going to be paying attention to the new stage that is the bubble.
Correct.
So I didn't hear anything from him, and they had that Friday night call that was on June 12th. Remember, it was the Kyrie call. LeBron reportedly did not participate, but 80 players did, and the point of the call was play or not play, bubble or not bubble. Kyrie led the charge, no bubble. And reportedly, he was saying, I don't support going into Orlando. I'm not with systemic racism and all the BS. Something smells a little fishy. That's Kyrie. And yesterday, he was trending on Twitter. I know you saw it. Because people were saying, aha, he was right from the start, because now everybody has come to the same conclusion. It is smelling a little bit. It smells fishy here. So Kyrie got his props yesterday for taking an early stand. It was a little easier for him to take that stand because he had already ruled himself out.
He was injured. He couldn't go to the bubble.
And they wouldn't let him go. He said, I'll go with my team, but I can only watch my team. And they said, no, you can't go because we can only have X people in the bubble. Right? Okay, so it seemed a little easier for him to make that statement, but still, that was a call on Friday night, June 12th, and the season was teetering because it seemed like a whole lot of players were 50-50, as you say, about should we even go to the bubble? Yeah,
but I think the biggest thing was, Skip, the big names, the Giannis's, the LeBrons, the ADs, the Kawhis, the James Harden, Russell. They was like, okay, let's go.
all right? And on June 14th, Patrick Beverley tweeted. You remember this one?
Yep.
This was a classic to me because it said so much in a few words. Hoopers say what y'all want, meaning NBA players. If at King James said he hooping, we all hooping. So Patrick was just saying, he runs this league. He's the face of this league. He is the most powerful voice in this league. And if he says we are going to play basketball in Orlando. And Patrick concluded in the tweet, not personal, only all caps, business. And then he had a hashtag stay woke. Great. So he's basically saying, the King is saying, we're playing basketball.
Right.
And obviously, on purely a basketball level, the Kings got a good team this year, and the Kings team was really hot right before the pandemic hit, as you know. And the King obviously has a real shot, a legit shot, maybe even an odds-on favorite shot to win his 4th championship this year in a sort of a sprint to the finish line in Orlando.
Yeah.
So the King has invested a whole lot of days down in that bubble. And I know it's not exactly going to prison, but they don't love it because they've been away from their kinfolk, their family, their friends. And it just gets to be cabin fever down in the bubble. So LeBron's invested all those cabin fever days where you've been stuck in your hotel room or playing video games just around the guys, the fellas. And all of a sudden, that happened in Kenosha, and LeBron flipped and went completely the other way. So he's invested all of this. They're coming off their best game. I mean, it was their most impressive game in the bubble, right?
Yep.
You've had some trepidation about can't make shots, three-point shots. They
made shots.
They made a whole bunch of shots, and he made shots. He played his best game. And so it shocked me that all of a sudden, off last night, he went completely the other way and appears, as you point out very strongly, he appears willing to risk all the investment in the bubble, a team that is poised to maybe win his 4th championship. And remember, obviously, I'm not saying his clock is ticking at this point. I'm not even saying the window is closing, but it's starting to come down to, well, you got to face reality. It's 17 years in the league.
Of course.
Okay, so he has to be thinking in the back of his mind, man, I got a shot here, because you talk about his legacy. He's got an off-the-court legacy, and he's got an on-the-court legacy, and it would certainly help to win a 4th championship, right?
Yes.
So he is apparently willing last night to risk this because it was a fiery, emotional, maybe even an angry 8 p.m. Eastern meeting in the bubble. All the players who wanted to attend, all the coaches who attended, even Jacob Blake family members virtually attending. It was quite a meeting, and I wish we could have been flies on that wall to hear what exactly was said. But in the end, he led the charge out the door of Lakers and Clippers, and the Bucks were already, so to speak, out the door. So the top 3 teams are threatening to call it off.
Right.
Well, what's Adam Silver going to do now? We'll still try to play? Does that make the Heat the favorite? You know, like all of a sudden?
Skip, you know, the thing that made Muhammad Ali so beloved is that he was willing to give up something that had fought his entire life to achieve. Right in the prime of his career, he says, this isn't right, I'll go shut it down.
He sure did. I don't think he still gets enough credit. It was 3 years in the heart of his prime.
In the heart.
Yeah. I mean, LeBron is 17 years in. This is, what was he, like 27-ish?
Yes.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Skip, is that he's like, as you mentioned, all these things. He's in prime position. He's in the best position he's been in a long time to compete, seriously compete for a title.
Yep.
And he said, I get that up. Because what's going on in my communities and what these minorities are going through, and the systemic racism and the injustice and the economic inequality that I see is not worth this.
Okay, here we go. Because I'm back to the Pat Bev tweet. You could reverse it and say, say what y'all want, but if King James said we ain't hooping, you ain't hooping.
If King James out, we all out.
I got it. That's the bottom line to this.
No mercy.
All Well, NBA games last night were boycotted over the shooting of Jacob Blake, and meetings about what to do with the remainder of the season will continue this morning in just a couple minutes. One anonymous player said the season was in jeopardy, but apparently that may not be what the majority want. Joining us now, Yahoo Sports senior NBA insider and TNT sideline reporter Chris Haynes, who is live inside the bubble. Chris, we appreciate your time. I know you're busy. What is the latest you're hearing?
Well, obviously, we know about the meeting that the players are going to have. This is the second meeting that they're going to have this morning, which will be 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is in about 12 minutes. And so after this meeting, we should have a firm grasp on what the players plan to do moving forward. I think most people believe, I think it's highly likely that the games will be postponed today or boycotted, I should say, today. And I think we'll have a firm grasp on what they're going to do after the conclusion of this meeting this morning.
Chris, do you have just a personal gut feeling after all you heard, all you saw last night, all the great work that you did, and then you slept on it? Do you have a gut feeling on season or no season?
Yeah, I think, obviously I reported last night that the Lakers and Clippers were the two teams that voted to cancel the remainder of the postseason. I will say this, that, emotions were high. There was a lot of frustration during that meeting. That happens when you have a big player base and difference of opinions going on. But I think when it's all said and done, the emotions kind of go away. I would be very surprised, me personally. I'd be very surprised if the season was canceled. I know the majority of players want to finish the season out. And, I was kind of surprised that, hear about LeBron James and Kawhi Leonard, had their stance and saying, hey, think it's best that we go home from here. Because LeBron, that was a stance that he hasn't taken, up until this point. And, I was surprised to find out he had that position. But again, frustration was high last night. Emotions were raw. So I could understand if when guys had the opportunity to sleep on it, that they probably come back with a different position this morning in the meeting.
It's being reported that LeBron wants owners to take more ownership in this, and they want them to use their influence, and they want them to use their connects to get this done. So what assurances can Adam Silver and some of the owners give these players that they're going to work as diligently as the players are to try to bring about change in these communities?
Well, the ownership group, a lot of them, I can't write them off the top of my head, but a lot of them have, donated money into, social justice causes that try to stem the systemic racism that's been going on in this country forever. And so those things have been taking place. And so I'm not exactly sure of what in particular LeBron or any other player is asking for when it comes to ownership. I know that, I know it was brought up about, where is Adam Silver? Why isn't he here, here in the front lines with us? So, those things did come up. And again, there was players were all over the place. It was something that happened, starting with the Milwaukee Bucks, obviously. You guys touched on it. I was listening. They caught everybody off by surprise. The union would have liked to have put out a joint statement saying that all teams were going to, boycott the game. And I think Milwaukee Bucks, and particularly George Hill, kind of led the charge there and spearheaded them into getting that boycott on and kind of just shocking everybody, which led to a ripple effect where, it was impossible for the other two teams to play that day. And so there was a lot talked about that. It was a point that Patrick Beverley, kind of called out leadership, talking about the lack of transparency, and there's guys frustrated that, players not on the same page. So, their emotions were high, and that's why I think it's very productive that they get a second meeting in here, which they're going to do, to kind of clear the air, let guys sleep on it, and hopefully they can come back and make a sound decision.
So, Chris, if the Bucks had opted to go ahead and suck it up and play yesterday against Orlando, what was the grand plan? What was the master plan with CP3 and LeBron at the head of it to have a unified front? Were they planning to boycott the next day's games?
That I don't know, Skip, but that's where the frustration lies.
Yeah.
That's why Patrick Beverly kind of called out leadership, asking like, what were we going to do?
Mm-hmm.
What was the plan? If the Bucks didn't do that, what was the message? Because nobody was informed. And leading up to it, and I wrote that morning that there was a meeting the night before, and players that got together, and Chris Paul was there, Andre Iguodala was there, and players were really going over the logistics of what it's going to look like if we boycott. So it got real, and players were kind of using that meeting as a venting session as well. Players are traumatized; they're hurt. Depression is real, and a lot of them are not getting help. A lot of them, don't trust the psychologists that are here on campus. They can go onto an app and set up an appointment, but for confidentiality purposes, a lot of them are not doing that. And so there's a lot going on right now. And that I think if the Bucks would have played, I think the rest of the games would have been played yesterday. And I think there's definitely people that were frustrated with the Bucks and how they handled it, but also there's players frustrated with leadership, saying, okay, what was the plan if the Bucks didn't do that? Why weren't we informed?
But let me ask you this, hypothetically, if the Clippers and Lakers walk, what happens?
Shannon, I don't see a scenario of where the Clippers and Lakers will walk. It's still like, it's not like, it doesn't work that way in any voting system where if two teams don't want to do something or two parties don't want to do something, that the whole league shuts down. That's just the voting is in favor of the players who want to play or the teams who want to play. It's more of them than there is the Lakers and Clippers. So I don't see a scenario where the Clippers and Lakers would just walk. Those just happen to be the two teams that voted no. And then just let me make this clear. Just because those two teams voted no, not everybody on the Lakers and Clippers want to go home right now. It's just a majority of players of Lakers and Clippers. As of last night, let's keep that in mind. Last night with the emotions raw, everything going on, so it can definitely be a different outcome this morning.
You good?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Okay. So, Chris, you made the point last night on TNT. Nobody obviously is being held hostage in the bubble. Is it possible that we would see more players, so to speak, opt out, where we would see, a new wave of players just say, I can't take this. I need to be home. I need to be with my family, or I need to be in the streets leading the protests. And yet they would all leave different teams, but again, the teams would all be left mostly intact. Maybe they'd have to use backup players. Could you see that, where the season would go on with a loss of a number of players?
That's definitely a possibility, Skip. But I think what the players are trying to establish a united front, and they want everybody to be on the same page. And that's difficult to do when you have so many to work with. But, you look at what Paul George, after command Paul George, for coming out and talking about what he was dealing with, and, saying that attribute to his struggles. Like he wasn't there in the right frame of mind. And I don't think that was social justice issue concerns, but that's just the depression, anxiety, not being around your family. And then also, with everything that's going on in the world, players are used to, after games, going home to their families, going into people that they care about, confide in, and support. That is absent right now. And although there are family members here right now quarantined, they will be free in a few days. That hasn't been the case leading up to this point. And so, Skip, to answer your question, I think you could see that. But a lot of players also have stressed, like, look, guys, we're here. Like, we made the sacrifices to get to this point, and it's working. Let's finish this out. Let's continue to use this platform to spread awareness and to kind of put pressure on the local office, government officials, and everything else above that. So we can see some, but the players want to make sure, or they want to make it clear that it is better if they stay in united front more so than guys just leaving independently. So,
Chris, personalize this a little bit for us. How long have you been in the bubble now? What's it been? We going on how many weeks?
Weeks. I lost track. I'll say I've been here since June 29th.
Okay.
So
So
that's going on
almost
2 months already.
2 months.
Yeah.
So give us your personal view of that sort of cabin fever that you get stuck in the bubble where you can't see your friends, your relatives, your lady. You can't see anybody except you just keep working, nose to the grindstone, and then you go back to your hotel room every night. What has it been like? How does it play on your emotions and your psyche?
Man, it's not ideal. It's not ideal at all. I've been in this business for 10 years now, and there's been stretches where I've had to leave, be gone for 2 weeks for a road trip, but 2 weeks is nothing compared to 2 months. And I'm used to having my family. I'm used to having them around and being able to go to them. And I had my oldest daughter, Justice. She was going to college, just graduated from high school, was going to college, Clark, Atlanta. And I was really going through something. I don't know what it was, but I was going through something because I wasn't going to be able to see her off. She was going to leave in August, and I can't see my baby girl off to college. And luckily, she won't say luckily, but classes in-person classes were canceled. And so she will still be home when I get there. And I get to see her off, hopefully when she goes back in January. So that's just little things that I'm dealing with. And, media, we don't have, we're not allowed to have any family members come visit us, so that's going to be the case for media members all throughout this duration.
Do you think, Chris, is that when they went down to the bubble and a lot of guys, you see the Black Lives Matters and how many more, you see all the hashtags and the phrases on the back of their jerseys, but they said the progress seems to have slowed and the killings in the streets seem to have ratcheted up. And it's like, okay, yes, we came down here to play and we have a platform that we can elevate these issues, but it seems like nothing is changing. Like we're playing a game and what we were fighting for and what we were trying to draw attention to is still happening.
Well, Shannon, what I would say to that, Shannon, is that we knew gestures and kneeling and everybody wearing Black Lives Matter shirts. Let me say this. Let me say this. I'm gonna get back to your questions. Right? Everybody on campus is wearing Black Lives Matter shirt, and I remember 3 months when it wasn't cool to say Black Lives Matter, and all of a sudden, it's a trend. For a lot of people, it's a fashion statement. So I would just hope that everybody wearing these shirts, who thought differently before, I hope they, have a different approach, a different mindset when you're talking about some of the things that we go through as Black people, in this country. And I hope it's just not a fashion statement just because it looks cool to wear it now. But with that being said, Shannon, like all these gestures, I think players understood that this wasn't going to change things. It wasn't going to change systemic racism. It wasn't going to change the approach of police officers. But I think what has hit home with them is that they're doing this. They made the sacrifice to come out here. They're trying to make sure they turn basketball-related questions into social justice messages. And in doing all that, and then you still see something like that happen in Wisconsin, it does something to you. It triggers something in you. Most players, including myself, I've been falsely arrested. Arrested right in front of my house, in front of my wife, for just standing across the street in front of my home. And officer said I was trespassing, and I get arrested and falsely accused for some BS. And so it triggers different things in all of us. And I think that's what you saw just collide head on, is where you had things going on outside, and then you just feeling like you don't have any power. And when you feel like you don't have any power, just like a baby, when a baby is not getting fed or nourished, they start to cry. This is our version of crying right now. There's nothing we can do. The baby doesn't want to play. The baby doesn't want to go walk. He's crying. Like, we're crying inside. We don't know what to do. We feel powerless. And I think that's what all happened yesterday. Just, I don't know what can be done here, but I will say this. I'm sorry to be so long-winded, but I will say this, is that players being here and players boycotting, that was the biggest news of the day. And it's probably going to be the biggest news of today. And if every news outlet is talking about this, outside of sports, I'm talking about not sports outlet. If every news outlet is talking about this, they have to talk about why the players are doing that.
Right.
And if they're talking about why, then the messaging is still getting out there, and we're still putting pressure on local law enforcement, the government, politicians, to say a change is needed, and that's still positive.
But you know how it's being spun, Chris. Why are these millionaires crying about things that they're not experiencing? See, that's how they flip it. It's because a lot of these guys came from the communities that they're trying to impact change too. That's where they came from. And so they're using their platform, using their voices, using their resources. And people can't see outside of, well, it's not you, so why do you care? They care because it could be them. It could be their family members and people. So that's the thing. And I think that has a lot to do with it. You mentioned you've been down there for 2 months and you don't have any contact. They've been down there, and some of them have family that's coming, but they feel powerless because they see what just transpired in Kenosha after what just transpired with George Floyd in Minnesota a few months earlier.
Yeah, there are guys, I wrote about it, in my story for Yahoo yesterday, just to show you, like, athletes, millionaire athletes, Black people of any kind, any status, they're not immune to being racially profiled. No. A couple of players have told me that they, this year, have bought Teslas because they feel like buying Teslas, you don't see Black people ride in Teslas. And they feel like me buying one of those vehicles, limits the chances of me getting pulled over by the cops. So it shows you that this is not a situation where only lower class Black people deal with. This is something that we all face. Most players can tell you an encounter they had with a cop, and most of those encounters haven't been good in nature.
Chris, wow. So appreciate your time, your honesty, and what you said about the players wanting to take that power back. It means something. And that players meeting just starting a couple minutes ago, so we look forward to an update. And again, Chris Haynes, we appreciate your time from the bubble. Checking with you soon.
Y'all take care.
Appreciate it, bro.
No mercy. Welcome back to Undisputed. Well, we just had the opportunity to speak with Chris Haynes, who is in the bubble. And, guys, we've gotten to know Chris over the last couple months. He's come in, his personality, I love hearing from him. And, there was a different tone to Chris Haynes today. He said some powerful stuff. He had a lot to share about his personal experiences here. And I just want to get your reaction. And Shannon, I'll start with you on what you thought about what Chris Haynes had to say today.
Well, Chris believes that the emotion were extremely high. And he said, and what I gather, Skip, is that it wasn't well thought out. Because the night before, Skip, they was like, okay, what's going to transpire? And it seems to me they wanted to be in on what the Bucks were going to do. Mm-hmm. And it seems like the Bucks made a unilateral decision, and it forced all the other dominoes to fall down.
And it was a last second.
Right.
It was like 5 minutes to tip off.
Right. And you mentioned earlier, okay, you make this decision. Orlando, they're warming up. The other team is probably getting ready. They're getting stressed, getting ready to, we're going to get ready to head to one of these gyms. I think it's two. I think it's two of them. It's two gyms, right? They got two.
I think they're three.
Three, okay.
Yeah.
Like, we getting ready to head.
Thunder Rockets are getting ready. I think they were on site.
Right.
Because Westbrook, you could see him walking up and down the hall.
Right. So they're like, okay, we're doing this, and we just want to make sure we're cohesive. We just want to make sure we're unified. Yeah. We don't want one message to come out here and then we got to react to that message and then become unified. We would like to be unified from the jump. And I think that was the biggest thing that I gathered from what Chris said, is that the Bucks made their decision last minute, and it forced everybody else to make a decision last minute when everybody would have wanted to be on the same accord from the beginning. Two is that although the Lakers, some of the Lakers, obviously some of the more prominent Lakers, because it said LeBron left, Kawhi and some of the other Clippers left, seemed to me that they're like, we're willing to forego this unless these owners, Skip, and the owner said, we're going to, over the next 10 years, we're going to donate $300 million. But Skip, if I give a person money and says, okay, this is what you need to do, but you have no knowledge how to do it, what good is that?
None. Agreed.
And so you donate money to the community for what? Until you change laws that impact these communities, putting money into the community is not going to do anything.
How much has the NFL given to the community over the last 3-4 years?
Well, they said they're going to donate another $250 because with the players
coming.
Right.
To what?
Exactly,
Okay.
Skip. So until laws are enacted that impacts these communities, then that money can be put to good use. But as long as the laws are implemented to hold, to oppress, to deny, you just throwing money into a bottomless pit. And for the longest time, Skip, people think money is the key to all. Well, if I got money, no. Now, it gives you access. It gives you a means to maybe handle certain situations. You get better health care. You know, you ever run afoul with the law, you can have the best attorneys. Money will do that for you.
Yep.
But there are certain problems that money can't fix.
Agreed.
It's leg work, it's elbow grease, and it's in changing the laws that impact these communities. So Chris does not believe. He believes that this meeting today, since probably the games today will be postponed, but moving forward, probably Friday, Saturday, it'll be back business as usual. But I think the thing is, from what I gathered from Chris, there were some people disappointed that we postponed it, but we could have been more unified, got the message out. We're not playing today and not have to react to what the Bucs did hours earlier.
Correct. The anger, the raw emotion last night was caused in part by the Bucs just plunging into this decision 5 minutes to tip off. And it left everybody else in a bit of a lurch because they wanted to have a big press conference where everybody spoke. LeBron led the charge.
And you'd have a lot of the players in the background say, yeah, we're unified.
We're all for one and one for all.
Right.
And all of a sudden, one huge domino fell, and then they fell across sports last night. Baseball games were canceled. MLS, WNBA games canceled everywhere, sort of because it put everyone in an awkward position of saying, well, are you really going to play too?
Well, you had the NBA couldn't.
Yeah.
Once the first game was canceled, there's nowhere anybody else could play.
How could you?
No.
You'd look terrible. You'd look like you don't care.
Correct.
Right?
Right.
So, again, what was most resounding came at the end of the night when it hit Twitter like thunder that Lakers, Clippers are out.
Yes.
They have voted out, and that LeBron led the charge out the door of the meeting room.
Right.
Lakers and Clippers.
Right.
So we got Bucks, Lakers, Clippers, and all of a sudden, Adam Silver is faced with my best three teams say they're out. At least Chris said that maybe sleeping it off, cooler heads will prevail, and he's still not to the point where he really believes, not that it's an empty threat, but that Lakers and Clippers will not play the rest of the playoffs. He's indicated his gut feeling was, as you heard, that they will play.
Correct.
But that LeBron wants action.
Right.
He wants, and this blindsided everyone from the commissioner down to all the owners. I don't think anybody saw that coming. Just read a piece on ESPN.com that indicates everybody was blindsided.
Yes.
And
because they said the Bucs coaches, Bucs front office had no idea.
Right.
So if they didn't have an idea, it's hard for me to imagine that the NBA execs had an idea.
So when LeBron marched out the door late last night, you don't think that got every owner's attention?
Absolutely.
You don't think every owner has been on the phone today to try to smooth this over a little bit, to say, hey, what do you need? What do you want?
Right.
Back to your action. We need you to... Well, the Bucs were on the phone from the locker room. We talked about this earlier. They managed, because they got some power in Milwaukee. They've got some clout.
Yeah, their owner got clout.
I'd say, but without their owner helping to open the doors, they were on the phone from the locker room with the lieutenant governor and the attorney general of the state of Wisconsin. Okay, well, it's a start, right?
Yes.
And then they said, Andre Iguodala delivered a passionate speech last night at the meeting saying, hey, at least some things are happening. He said, does anybody in here know that there's a police reform bill that's going to be voted on in the state of California tomorrow. It's Friday.
Right.
I just read about SB 731, and I read what's in the bill. It's a start.
Right.
It's pretty good.
Right.
It's about consequences.
Right.
It's so at least that was already in the works in the state of California. He's saying at least we have some things going forward here. So maybe cooler heads will prevail, but obviously I don't want to see any of this get diluted by everybody saying, we're okay now, because you're not okay now.
Skip, I think the thing is also is that when you see these billionaires and multimillionaires, when they donate to these campaigns, they get exactly what they want.
Yeah.
The Congress people, they pass legislation on their behalf that's in the best interest of them. LeBron James says, NBA owners, when you donate to these campaigns, we want you to do the same thing. We want you to use your influence to get legislation passed for us. That's what we're asking. It's not good enough to say we're going to donate X amount of dollars over the next 10 years. No. The community, because the community, if I put a nice fancy building in a community that's still oppressed, what have I done? Because you get people that don't live in that community, that don't want to be in that community, that don't know how to talk to the people in the community, and then you get an escalation. And instead of a de-escalation, you get an escalation, and then you get 7 shots to the back. And then you get a situation where you kneeled on someone's neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. So that's what you're going to have to change. You're going to have to change the laws. You're going to have to get the training of how to deal with people that you're not used to dealing with.
Correct.
No mercy. The Bucks' decision to boycott Game 5 for the shooting of Jacob Blake sparked boycotts from all other NBA teams that were set to play last night. This led to a players' meeting last night where the Clippers and Lakers reportedly voted to not continue the remainder of the season. They were the only teams to do so, and meetings are continuing right now, guys, this morning. Fox Sports NBA analyst Chris Broussard is with us now. Chris, we appreciate your time, and I'd like your reaction to everything that took place yesterday.
Well, guys, I've never been prouder of black athletes in my life and the white athletes that are supporting them. I have longed for the day when black athletes would use their power and their platform on behalf of the masses of African-American people to force change on this country, because I think our black athletes being so beloved, being so well connected to corporate America, being so wealthy, being so irreplaceable, have a leverage that most African Americans just don't have. And so I think that gives them some power. I'm glad to see these players begin to exercise that power on behalf of black people. I think they have shown a willingness to make a sacrifice of their livelihood, hundreds of thousands of dollars perhaps, and even millions of dollars if it may come to that, on behalf of other American citizens who don't have the power to fight for themselves. I think any American should be able to respect and admire that, regardless of your political affiliation or whatever it may be. I've heard a lot about a plan. And we know the Bucks, I thought it was good that they spoke with the Attorney General in Wisconsin, the Lieutenant Governor in Wisconsin yesterday, and we're told by them to hold the different levels of government accountable. They found out that in the midst of all that's going on in Wisconsin, the legislature has been off for months. And that is now something that's in the public view because of what the Milwaukee Bucks have done. I love that LeBron said in the meeting, we need to begin holding owners accountable, because I believe these owners have power. They are wealthy. They are corporate titans. They are connected to lawmakers, to politicians, to police commissioners and chiefs. They have incredible power. Meek Mill, just look at that situation. Meek Mill, the rapper, was in jail for 5 months. Jay-Z, Rick Ross, Kevin Hart, members of the Philadelphia Eagles and other athletes were trying to get him out of jail. Robert Kraft and Michael Rubin, owner of the Philadelphia 76ers, obviously Kraft, the Patriots, they go and visit Meek Mill and say he shouldn't be here. And in 2 weeks, he's out of jail. In 2 weeks. And then the judge is removed off the case is dropped, and everything changes.
And all the charges dropped.
Right. That's the power that these guys have, even more so than a LeBron James and other guys. But a LeBron James has the power to push them to get them to do this. They can support his More Than a Vote campaign, open up all their arenas for voters and fight against voter suppression. There's a lot of things they can do. So that is part of the plan. But I'm going to be honest. Even if there's no plan, I salute these athletes for standing up and saying, you know what? We are done entertaining America until America respects us fully as equal and fellow human beings. And not just us, but all Black Americans. There is a long history in this country of Blacks entertaining whites with singing, dancing, foot races, boxing, wrestling, dating all the way back to the slave plantation. So that shows you whites can enjoy the physical gifts of African Americans and enjoy being entertained by us without respecting our humanity. And I think that's what these players are feeling when they see what's happening, Jacob Blake and so on and so forth. They may not even be able to put it in some of them in that historical context, but that is what they are feeling. So I salute them for saying no more status quo. We want to be respected as men. And I'll lastly say this. Did Muhammad Ali have a plan? No. Muhammad Ali just acted on his convictions. He came to a point, he said, I've got to stand by my convictions. I don't know what's going to happen from here. I may never fight again, but I'm standing up as a man on my convictions for what I believe and for my people. And that is what these players are doing, even if they don't have a plan. And Muhammad Ali obviously is the most beloved athlete in the world now. So I hope, that we'll see how this goes further, but that's my general reaction, and I got nothing but respect for these dudes.
I agree with you, Chris. And I think today's athletes are not only socially conscious, they're morally conscious as well. Because I think sometimes, they were conflicted. I mean, morally, they knew the right thing to do. But before, Skip, if you spoke out anything was political, your sponsors dropped you. So you could be morally, but you didn't want to be socially because I want to hold on to this $100,000 contract. I want to hold on to this $1 million contract. So you were morally conflicted because morally you knew the right thing to do. But socially, if you came out public with it, it could cost you. Now these guys are morally and socially conscious and I don't care. And for the most part, their sponsors have stayed on board with them. You see, you said something. You see how quick that happened, Skip? Robert Kraft, what Jay-Z and all these prominent Blacks, Jay-Z's worth $1 billion.
Yep.
What all these prominent Blacks couldn't do, Robert Kraft and Michael Rubin went and got done in 2 weeks. So in other words, if these owners, these wealthy white owners in the NFL and the NBA were to say, you know what? Marco Rubio, Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Nadler, this is what we need to get done. You say America's, but look, this notion that America was founded, America is working exactly how it was intended to work, Skip. Because the founding fathers, there's only certain ones that were in there. They were what, Skip? They were wealthy, they were white, landowners, slave owners. That was it. So in other words, if you fit that criteria, kind of like today, you have power if you're wealthy, you white, you own land, or you're in corporations. So America's working how it was intended to work. But Blacks weren't meant to have power. That's why you enslaved them. That's why you put Jim Crow. That's why you enacted laws. So we need, and LeBron is absolutely right. Jeannie Buss, Mark Cuban, I get it. Yeah, we appreciate the slogans. We appreciate the hashtags. We appreciate the symbols that America, you take down these symbols, these Confederate generals off military establishments. Okay, you rename a school. You rename a building for John Lewis, and maybe there's another MLK Street going up somewhere in America. But enough of the symbols, we want substance. We want something tangible that we can see in the African-American community that says, okay, you're going to treat us differently. We're going to do away with the systemic racism and this economic inequality that exists. We need a better share. We need a bite of the apple. We need a bite of the apple too. We want the American dream. I commend the players. Maybe it wasn't as thought out as it could have been, but that's neither here nor there. And this notion of playing, Skip, I can assure you, The America that the founding fathers set forth and the America that we've seen today, there's a lot of things that have transpired in between them to get to where we are. Mm-hmm. So stop with this notion, the plan, like the full-scale plan is going to be complete. No, it's going to take baby steps, but we got it. We're there. Like I said, the players have the platform. Now they need to get with organizations that's been doing this for an extended period of time. You're the computer players. Now you need the software. Get with the people, and we can get this thing done. We're going to get it done. I commend the players, but I'm proud of the players. Make sure they understand that. I'm proud of you guys. And a lot of America is proud of what you've done yesterday.
So, for me, Chris, last night hit emotionally like Rudy Gobert night. When the pandemic first started, the emotional impact of it just hit me like 10 tons of bricks. Wait a second. We might lose the NBA again for the right reason. That was for the COVID reason, obviously. And I also loved and applauded and congratulated what the Bucks did because it took a while. It was raw emotion. They finally decided as a team about 5 minutes to tip off with the Magic warming up, ready for tip off out on the floor. They decided we just can't do this. This happened in our home area in what's basically a Milwaukee suburb. And they said, no, we just can't do this. And I don't know how well thought out it was because it left some teams like Orlando to start with in a lurch because they weren't ready not to play, and it made them look a little awkward and sheepish. And it also, according to all the reports, that fiery meeting they had last night, 8 o'clock Eastern, was about, hey, we thought we were going to be a unified front. We were going to do this all together because we had discussed doing this as a group, not as a solo team doing this, as the first huge domino that fell across sports last night. So, again, I still love what they did because the impact was shocking from sea to shining sea. Yeah. It reopened a lot of new eyes. But the reason they had that meeting was there were a lot of players, starting with LeBron and CP3, who said, wait a second, we thought we were going to do this together. We thought we were going to have a big press conference and we were going to speak, all of us were going to speak, and it wound up George Hill speaking mostly for the Bucks.
No mercy. No final decision could be made last night with how the teams wanted to continue with the NBA playoffs. LeBron and both LA teams reportedly voted to not continue playing, but were the only teams to do so. And meetings this morning are currently underway to determine how to move forward as we wait for the latest. Chris Broussard still with us. Chris, I would like to know how you see this playing out right now.
Well, yesterday I felt like after a few days, the players would likely resume playing. But obviously, we've seen the reports about the Lakers and Clippers voting for the season to end. And if that's the case, if that remains the case today, I don't see how they play. You know, Udonis Haslem is right in that without the Lakers and the Clippers, you can't have a playoff. I was surprised about this with the Lakers, too, because obviously, as socially active as LeBron has been, we know how important this championship was to him, and he's obviously not getting any younger. The Clippers, I wasn't surprised because I've been hearing rumblings even before they went down to the bubble that a lot of them really didn't want to go for various reasons, social justice and also COVID. So I wasn't as surprised about them. I actually thought about changing my pick of them winning the championship because I was wondering were they going to be all in mentally. I obviously stuck with it. But I think it all hinges on what the Lakers and the Clippers decide because I think as they go, the league will go.
I agree. I think that has a lot to do with it. I think sometimes you don't want to make any decision when you're in an emotional state. And I think yesterday, because everybody was so emotional, all the feelings were raw, you don't want to make a hasty decision. Take time off. You go to bed. You think about it like, okay, as you're lying in your room, you think, okay, is this the wisest decision? Is this the best decision? Is there another way around that we can make the same impact without doing something so drastic? And maybe they come to the conclusion they can. Maybe they come to the conclusion in order for us to have the impact that we actually going to generate change, this is what needs to be done. I agree, but I'm not surprised because at the end of the day, Chris, is what Skip and I was talking about earlier. Every day you live your life, everything you say, you're writing your eulogy. And LeBron James does not want the only thing that when people talk about him when he's lying in rest is that he was a basketball player. That's become abundantly clear to me, especially over the last 5, 6, 7 years. Ever since Trayvon Martin, it's become very clear to me. Not only is LeBron James morally conscious, he's socially conscious. And so I think that's weighing on him because what he thought was going to happen, the platform, and he still has it, is still he see a Jacob Blake and he see the situation that is not going away. And so I think that's weighing heavily on him and a lot of guys in the bubble.
I don't want to try to undercut or dilute the emotion of the impact from last night, but I'm just going to reiterate what Chris Haynes told us from inside the bubble a few minutes ago on the show here. His gut feeling is that the Lakers and Clippers will come back around today to playing with some caveats, with some conditions, which are that LeBron needs to hear directly from some owners that some real action will be taken now, not later. I don't know if he can pull that off quickly. I don't know how many more games will get boycotted. The great irony of this is the players don't want to be down there any longer than they have to be. And now, if you boycott for a little while, it's going to push them if they decide to finish. Now you got to stay an extra week or whatever.
Well, you do believe today's game will be canceled also,
I do. Right? I don't know how you cannot cancel today. But from here on, my gut feeling is they will play. Obviously, social justice is hugely important to LeBron, but as you always tell me, two things can be true.
Correct.
And I still believe that championship, that sprint to this finish line, end of year 17, is also somewhat important enough that he would go ahead and finish.
Yeah.
Obviously, the sports fans and all of us, we want to see them play. But I will say this. If they decide not to play, I think that will put tremendous pressure on the NFL players not to play, particularly the black ones. And if they didn't play, then this goes to an entirely different level. And that's when we're talking about a lot more money. We're talking about a much more popular sport. We're talking about a sport that hits a larger diversity, racial diversity of fans. So I think it could be incredibly powerful if that happened, because I don't know how the black players in the NFL, if the NBA players didn't play, it would put a lot of pressure on them not to play. And I think that'd be huge.
And I tell you what it would do, Skip. There will be no compromising on the Dallas Cowboys. I believe that ship.
True.
I believe that ship is sailed.
That's true.
After what the NBA players did yesterday and the stance that they could potentially take, the compromise is over. That ship is sailed.
Kneeling or not kneeling.
Right. Yes.
Agreed.
No mercy. The NBA boycotts have raised the question of whether we will also see players in the NFL do the same. The Lions had already canceled a practice earlier this week following the shooting of Jacob Blake. And USA Today's Jared Bell said this was a sign of evolution in protests within the NFL and that it better, quote, brace itself. And just checking this, guys, about half a dozen NFL teams have canceled practice today. So, Skip, how will this boycott movement impact the NFL?
I agree with what our man Chris Broussard just said. If the NBA cancels the rest of its playoffs, it's going to put enormous pressure on especially the black stars in the NFL.
Absolutely.
Huge pressure.
Yes.
To do something,
yes,
to boycott something. Maybe it's opening day. Maybe it's just the first game. I don't know, but it could be threatening for the whole season. Obviously, we've gone from COVID threatening the whole season to this is a whole new and more real and tangible threat to me in that it matters so much. Like COVID just came out of nowhere, and it's like an act of God almost, like something you can't control.
Correct.
This you can control. This is a very real American problem that's going to affect the most American sport of all, the one that you played.
Right.
And obviously, if they were playing preseason games, exhibitions as they call them, right now, they would definitely be postponed.
Correct.
They wouldn't be postponed. They'd just be canceled.
Correct.
Because they wouldn't make them up.
Right.
So we have some time until Thursday night, September 10th.
2 weeks from today, I believe, Skip. If I'm not mistaken, it's 2 weeks from today.
Texans at Chiefs. It
Correct.
would be. It would be. And then full slate on Sunday, ending with Cowboys at Rams on Sunday night, and the 2 Monday night games that always kick off the season. Whew. You know, again, I'm going to disqualify myself because we're in this business and our livelihood depends.
We're kind of in the football business.
We're kind of in the football business, and obviously COVID was a threat to our very network that we represent here.
Yep.
And this would be an even greater threat.
Yes.
So as much as I'm with the cause, I hope there's some way, just me speaking very selfishly, that they find a way to both protest and drive home some actionable changes.
Right.
And still play football. That's what I'm hoping.
Well, I agree with you. It's going to put enormous pressure if the NBA players were to just, walk away in the middle of the playoffs and say, "No, we're done. We don't like what we're seeing in America. We don't think NBA owners, you're doing enough to help our cause."
Yep.
And so until you show some seriousness that you're going to help, this is what we're going to do. Skip, you remember in 2011, the owners wanted something from the players. And the player says, "Nah, we're not going to give you that." The owners locked the players out.
They did.
And they locked them out until the players acquiesced and gave them something that they wanted. Okay, owners, this is what we want.
Yep.
Now, we don't want to go down this path, but if you seem unwilling
That's a good point. Yep.
to help us with this, this is what we'll do. We don't want to go down here. We don't. But we want to see change in America. And we don't think that you giving, now all of a sudden you give your employees Juneteenth off. We don't believe that issuing statements and hashtags, we don't believe that's enough. We don't believe saying we're going to give you this amount of money. No, we want you to call those legislators, those lawmakers that can enact policies and laws that directly affect our communities. That's what we want you to do. Are you willing to do that, Jerry Jones?
Yep.
You seem to be the loudest, the most prominent. Mr. Kraft, we saw what you did for Meek Mill. That's one. We need you to do more of that for this community. Are you willing to do that?
Agreed. I hear all you just said. So the clock is now ticking on the National Football League. You have 2 weeks from tonight.
Yes.
And then 2 weeks, a little plus, before that opening Sunday.
Right.
To enact some change. I don't know who's going to be the most driving force of the players. Is it young Patrick Mahomes? Will Tom Brady finally get involved? Will Drew Brees step up at this point and say, we've got to drive home some real change here?
It can be done. Skip, you remember in 2001, they canceled a weekend.
They did.
For 9/11. So the NFL is well aware they can do things. The NFL is that's the measuring stick. I mean, of sports in America, the NFL, hey, it owns Sundays.
It does.
People playing everything around it. The church service, whatever they're going to do, when they go to eat, they playing all that around the games.
They do.
Okay, NFL, you're on the clock. You got 2 weeks.
No mercy. As we've been discussing all morning, the players did have that meeting this morning to discuss their plan moving forward. And Collins news that they want to continue playing. That is a very interesting point for us to end on. So, Shannon, tell me your final thought from everything today.
The players did what they did, Skip. They took a knee for those that couldn't stand.
Yep.
They shined a light for those that couldn't see. And they gave a voice to those that couldn't be heard. This was what this was about. This is what this has always been about. Nothing more, nothing less. They're tired of their community and people that look like them being abused in the streets with no accountability at the end of the day.
I hear you. My emotions after 2.5 hours across from you with Chris Broussard, Chris Haynes, very mixed. I'm still very happy about what the Bucks did yesterday. It was stunning, and it was beautiful, and it was extremely nationally impactful.
Yes.
And it caused a ripple effect across sports that, again, I don't know what good it will do in the long haul, but in the short haul, it reopened a bunch of eyes.
Right.
Wow, these people are really serious about this. So I love that, but I'm happy to hear, according to ESPN, that maybe they're going to figure it out and go play through the rest of this schedule. We love our basketball. We love our NFL.
Right.
And we're hoping that they all play.
Yep, I'm glad the players stepped up.
Yep.
But it shouldn't be their responsibility. We sent people to Washington. We sent people to local and state government to do what we're asking our athletes to do.
That is correct.
But they took it upon themselves, and they're doing a great job.
All right, guys, well done today. That is it for Undisputed. Thank you for watching us, and let's just remember to listen and be good to one another. See you tomorrow.